Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Mike Warlick, and some of you know me, and some of you don't. Maybe some of you don't want to know me. But I'm the Vice President for Defense at AFCEA International, and I want to thank you for joining us here for this session this afternoon. The lunch keynote just broke up literally 5 minutes ago, so there are people coming down this direction, and you'll probably pick up some additional attendees as we go through the session today. We're really right at 1:40, and that's the start time, so I think probably what I should do is just go ahead and move ahead and introduce this great team that's going to be presenting this afternoon. The title of the session this afternoon is the 21st Century Learning Facilitation Methods. And I want to start by saying thank you for attending this conference. It's important. We're glad we're able to host it. COVID almost bounced us out of there, but not quite. And our attendance, quite frankly, is pretty close to 2020 numbers that we had when we were here last time. To step back a few years, I was actually the commanding officer of the Marine Corps Communication Electronics School back in the mid-90s, 95 to 97. And I've had the pleasure of seeing what's happened to that school over the years since then. Needless to say, it's changed, and you're going to hear a little bit about that change here in just a few minutes. In fact, it's dramatically changed in that the training for officers in the Marine Corps shifted from the East Coast to Quantico all out to 29 Palms. That was a significant shift in training and a significant shift, and as they'll probably be talking about here shortly, on the requirement to have key people to do that training, not to mention do the training. Colonel Broom is the moderator for this panel, Joe Broom, and he's the commanding officer, and he's responsible for the training of all Marines in communications, ground electronics repair, aviation command and control, and ground-based air defense military occupation specialties. You'll hear more of that soon. He was groomed for his present role while recently assigned at the branch as a branch chief, information command and control, and communications and computer, now called IC4, headquarters Marine Corps, and he also served as the commanding officer, Marine Wing Communications Squadron 28, located at Cherry Point, North Carolina. He joined the Marine Corps as an enlisted Marine, so he's worked his way to where he is right now in 1986 and was selected for an enlisted commissioning program in 1997. As I just mentioned, I think he's well groomed for his current command and well groomed for the future. So let's give them a warm round of applause for being here today, and I'm going to turn it over to Colonel Broom to get started.
Hey, how are you today? Doing all right? Okay, so first of all, you just heard I came in 1986. I wish you hadn't said that in front of everybody. So yeah, I have been doing this a long time. So I have the team with me today. Lieutenant Colonel Shanker is the CEO of Com Training Battalion, and Lieutenant Colonel Tucker is the CEO of Air Control Training Squadron. So together, we train every single Marine in the communications and aviation C2 MOSs in the Marine Corps. So I'm going to open this like I'm going to close this. This is a call to industry today. We need some help. You're going to hear those details here in a few minutes, specifically what we're looking for. But we're looking to enhance our training, mostly in the virtual realm with AR, VR, and also in a virtual learning environment. We'll get to those details. So I'm going to start out by talking a little bit about what the school does, where we're at. The mission, I already told you, we train everybody in communications, electronics, maintenance, aviation, C2 across the Corps. The vision, trying to provide these Marines an environment that they can learn on anywhere, not just at the schoolhouse, but they can come back to it as well. Create lifelong learners with them. And the part I am missing right now is the distance education piece, because you have to come and put hands on gear right now. And while I absolutely support that and want to continue that, I need more Marines to be able to get on the gear remotely. And for warfighting units, we provide the Marines to the fleet that build those little lightning bolts on the slide you guys have all seen, right? They're just supposed to magically work. We make that magic happen. All right, so we are scattered across the country. The main campus is right here in the desert, which is in the middle of nowhere in the Mojave. It's not held, but I can see the gates from where I'm at. We also put through in our 3 satellite campuses on Okinawa, Pendleton, and Lejeune, a large number of Marines for sustainment training. All right, so this is our production. 102 programs of instruction, 41 MOSs, over 12,000 students a year. Okay, that is a large throughput. We're the size of a small college, okay? And we do that on with a very limited number of high quality instructors who we work nonstop from November to June. They go into a POI review across the summer, and it starts all over again when the fall, when we get our fresh drops out of boot camp. So we took the Commandant's planning guidance the previous CO did, and he worked a long-range campaign plan that we are still executing and we're about to update. We had to close out some of the goals that he set because things take many years to get that done. All right, but what they have done at the schoolhouse is nothing short of revolutionary. As we move from an industrial age training, and for those Marines and former Marines in the room, you remember the PowerPoint days and the foot stomper and the ELOs and TLOs, right? And you tested to that standard, and it became just rote memorization and regurgitation on a test. We don't do that anymore. Okay, these schools are very much performance driven. You must demonstrate in order to graduate. It is no longer cooperate to graduate. The programs build on themselves. The tests are inclusive of previous programs, so students can no longer brain dump that. And the techniques have changed too. We've gone from purely instructor-led, we've gone to student-led classes. We've gone to gamification. Every kid carries a smartphone in his pocket, so now we use those with web-based games for them to play and compete on each other in the classroom. So it gets pretty competitive to see who gets the best scores as they move along. So we have changed things, and what we're doing right now, we're in the process of installing a campus-wide Wi-Fi network, just like you would get on any college campus. And the first tranche of that, the first implementation will go in starting this fall, so we'll be 50% complete before the new fiscal year and 100% next year. So we have moved the campus into an information age learning environment, and I need help from industry to get us to the next piece. I'm just going to skip that slide. We'll just move right on into the subordinate commander's briefs, and I'll turn it over to Lieutenant Colonel Tucker.
So good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. As Colonel Broom said, I'm Lieutenant Colonel Emma Tucker. I'm the CO of Air Control Training Squadron. I just want to start because the name of my unit says Air Control Training Squadron, but I believe it's a complete misnomer. I'm probably more the Common Electronics Maintenance Training Battalion. I actually have 4 completely different occupational fields, training 24 different MOSs across the unit. So I have the 7200 occupational field, and this is the one that you would associate probably with the air control piece of our title. This has everything from your air control officers and enlisted Marines, air defense, to the LAD Stinger gunners in it, and we train all those at the school. I have the 5900 occupational field. These are the individuals that are the maintainers for all of that specialized equipment that the air control guys use, to include the radar systems, such as the Gator. I have the 2800 occupational field, which is all of your ground electronic maintenance Marines. They train on everything from basic ground radio repair to sensor technicians to personal computer repair. And then lastly, I have the Advanced Training School for Explosive Ordnance Disposal, which is in the 2300 OC field. It's a little bit of a weird one that I have explosive ordnance disposal. A little bit of regionalization on that one that made them come to me, but I'll tie it in how it all comes full circle, because they do use robots, which my ground electronic maintainers are required to repair. So before I get into the individual OC fields and talk specifically about how we've changed the training, I kind of need to talk about how we're training, the way we're employing these Marines as we look to 2030. The biggest thing, and we all know it, is that we're looking at a more networked and distributed environment. And with that comes some modernization across all of these MOSs that I've been talking to. I mean, for Aviation C2, we're looking at different nodes, because we're looking at smaller units being distributed. And so we're going to be employing them in different manners than we see in the current organizations that we've been used to since like the Vietnam War, and how we employ our agencies. So that's going to bring some challenges with it as we continue to look forward. And so as we're doing our modernization of our instruction, we're trying to make sure that we're incorporating looking at the future while ensuring that we're still maintaining the requirements training to today's fight and today's equipment sets. When we look towards our maintainers across the board in the Aviation C2 and in our electronics maintenance, and immediately when I say networked, it means lots of electronic things talking together, and when I say distributed, they're all over the place, which means that I'm going to have fewer maintainers and more locations that are going to be responsible for training more gear. And so one of the things that you'll see as we go forward here is how we're going to have to look to, instead of just training all specific equipment all the time, I'm having to do more theory and more troubleshooting techniques so that we can ensure that they're prepared for whatever COT solution we pull off the shelf at the next war, because as we all know, the communications equipment that we're using today is not going to be the communications equipment we're using tomorrow, because that stuff is in an ever-evolving state. And then for our explosive ordnance exploitation modernization, one of the biggest things is I'm the only school in the DoD that teaches ordnance exploitation. And so we really are the cutting edge of that within the DoD. And so how are we getting that information to do the whole make sense, and then actually act upon it? And that's the big piece, is how do we get it to the make sense piece? The guys on the ground are sensing, but to get to the act piece, that's going to absolutely be required. And our aviation C2 guys are going to have to be helping close those kill chains and kill webs as well as we go forward. And so that's kind of how we're looking at ConOps modernization, keeping in mind that we have to continue training for what we have today, the equipment we have today in today's fight. But with that, I kind of look at training in general and kind of the continuum, and you go crawl, walk, run, sprint, right? Like that's kind of the standard way we look at training. On the crawl side, we do that really good. That's your classroom instruction. I think the Marine Corps has that right in a lot of ways, and depending on where you're at is how it's actually implemented. And we have the run pretty well with the prac apps. We go to the field a lot, and we practice and rehearse those skills out there. And then the sprint with our service level exercises in the Marine Corps, not that we're doing them at the school, but they are happening on 29 Palms. The Marine Corps has got that pretty much sorted, and they're working in a good direction. The place where I, at my schoolhouse specifically, have issues is in that walk stage. I need to find ways to get sets and reps to my Marines. And I need to do it in a manner in which, one, I'm not breaking the equipment that I have. I have one Gator radar, which is a multi-billion-dollar piece of equipment. I can't break that to train people to fix it. I have, Marines that are doing explosive ordnance disposal. There's hazards out there. Every time I have them do a set or rep, they're putting themselves in harm's way. So if I can find ways in which they can do those sets and reps, VR or AR or however that may be, so they can do those rehearsals before I get them on that actual piece of equipment, like that's the space that I'm really trying to find out. And not just in the classroom, but being able to take that home and do it in their barracks room at night or whatever, so that they can continue to practice on their own or have those areas to do so. And so as I move through each of the OC fields, I'll kind of talk about some of the small wins we've had already, and then some of the things we're looking at and where I think maybe industry can kind of help provide some more. So on the first one is we'll talk the ground electronic maintainers, or my 2800s. We've been doing some stuff in the past with NIDA signal tracing trainer, and then the lab volt, both the SATCOM trainer and the AC/DC trainer. This has really helped in that theory area. We're looking for a NIDA replacement here in the future, and we're also, as we're going through the theory to more specific, or getting away from specific gear and teaching more theory across the board. But one of kind of the things currently that we've done at the school, and we're actually implementing across all the POIs, is having these culminating events that are outcome-based at the end of each one of our exercises, or our courses, I should say. And you can kind of see there in the middle, there's a room, the middle picture there, there's a room that has Humvees inside of it. Marines took those Humvees apart and put them through a door, just a standard door size, and brought piece by piece into that room and rebuilt the Humvees. And what we've done is the ground radio repair course, they start out, they learn the basics, the troubleshooting and all that in the classroom environment. They do some rehearsals with the lights on and stuff like that. They have some bench mounted ones, and we also have some that are mounted in the vehicles themselves, so they're in a little bit more tighter confined space. Then we move up to turning the lights off for them, and then we start playing some gunfire and some other loud noises in the background, and that's how they do kind of their final culminating event to try to make it a little more realistic as they get sets and reps. And we're trying to implement similar type of things like that across all of our maintainer POIs, because at the end of the day, when they're in the fight, they're not going to have necessarily the nice little room to go back to that's climate controlled, and they can just spend all day fixing that piece of equipment. With the maintainers, though, there are a few things that we're kind of looking forward to in the future. While we have some of this stuff pretty well done, we realize that there's a lot of IT and SATCOM and telecom communities out there that are doing the same training we're doing. And so it doesn't make sense that we're ignoring the best practices across the industry. We don't know what all those are, but it's something we're looking to kind of take a look at. So for those type of industry people, we really kind of look to examine your training and how you're training the people that are doing the maintenance on your gear and see what of that we can bring back for us as well. And then also looking for those enhanced training aids, especially some of the signal tracing and circuit troubleshooting. Those things that we can take back to the barracks at night in some type of electronic format or whatever. I've had some great work from some of my instructors who have kind of put some of that stuff onto using the product storyline and have put that on Moodle so our students can train at night. But we're looking for something that's a little bit better and also sustainable, because right now I have one guy doing it on his free time who's made it work, and eventually he's no longer going to be at my unit. So that's kind of the big things for our ground electronic maintainers, and I'll go ahead and move on to some of the stuff we're doing with our air control and air defense Marines. So for the air control side, one of the biggest challenges we have with teaching air control is that we're taking individuals and we're trying to teach them how to move about aircraft in a three-dimensional airspace with only having 2D systems to do that with. And so having to figure out how to make that work and simulate that in a way that they can see it visually instead of it just being this PowerPoint deep type of brief. We had some past where we had Booz Allen Hamilton loan us the tabletop commanders so we could explore that a little bit, and we've actually settled on and we're using VBS 3 right now in our classes, and we're kind of using it twofold. One, to teach specific airspace, but also looking at different air threats and even ground threats that they need to know about for controlling, and able to do kind of a simulated war via gaming, where they're actually, the actual information of those threat systems are in there, so then when they go to do the three-dimensional control, they kind of actually understand what that threat ring really looks like, because they were playing helicopter flying through these different threats in this simulation. We've seen great benefits of it, individuals that really can understand the 3D airspace much earlier in the course than previously. And so that's been one of the big wins for us on the air control side. Some of the things in the future that we're looking at, kind of two disparate things here, but the first is we have Mattis, which is the new air defense system coming online for our Stinger gunners, and there's going to be a desktop trainer and a virtual trainer with that. And so those things are going to be kind of a big piece for us to help get those sets and reps. It's built into our program office already, which is great that they thought about the training piece too, because I know sometimes it doesn't always happen, but they did in this case. But one of the other things is, and I think this is kind of across the board for all air command and control and just not at our school, but looking at part task trainers to help people get those sets and reps on the different controlling. And then also understanding that there's a lot of pilots out there that are learning to fly tactical missions, and I have a lot of controllers that are, learning to control tactical missions. And if there's a way for us to network those individuals so that they can do that, especially if they can just do it from home or whatever, and they can just sign on, and we have legitimate pilots who are learning, controllers who are learning, and they can do their sets and reps together. I mean, instead of it just being something that an instructor's doing all the time, and it's when they're in the classroom, it allows them to bring that learning outside. And then with the maintenance for all those systems, I kind of talked about how the program office has done right by the training before, and I'll reiterate that here. A big win for us was the part task trainer and the special training system when we fielded the Gator radar. That's absolutely allowed me to get sets and reps, put faults into the system and things like that with the trainer to allow Marines to train that maintenance of it without breaking my actual Gator. So hopefully we'll continue to see things like that in the future. Probably one of the other things that we did is this, the Lab Bolt Radar Fundamentals Trainer. It's been a great system for us. Unfortunately, right now, that system's probably 20 to 30 years old at the moment, the one I have. So currently, that's a big project we're working on, is trying to get that upgraded, and also to include future radar capabilities that may exist, and looking at things like passive radar theory and not just active radar theory, which we've taught in the past. And then future projects with this, one of the big things is the Gator radar is being proliferated across all of the MAGTAF, and so we have a counter battery version of it. We have the air control version, which is what I have at the schoolhouse right now, and then we also are going to have an air traffic control version of it. Right now, that's 3 separate sets of maintainers, and the one set of maintainers actually come to my school already, and then they go to Fort Sill because they do their basic electronics theory with me before going. And so we're looking at how is that going to consolidate in the future to ensure that the maintainers can use each radar in all the different modes that are available, because right now that's not consolidated. And then one of the other things with the Air Command Electronics Maintenance is they're actually looking at bringing back a Chiefs course that they had previously, and they're going to look at using a multi-phase POI. I'm not going to talk about that exactly here because I'm getting ready to talk to that on the next slide. Since our explosive ordnance disposal have actually already implemented this multi-phase POI, and it's something we've seen a lot of success for. So there's a distance learning phase up front, and in that distance learning phase, they're learning a lot of the administration type pieces and some of that stuff that you would got up front in like a lecture. And so they're doing that online before they come to us, which means when they get to the school, they're able to actually do more prac app. So we're able to use that time more wisely to get those sets and reps that I've been talking about. We're also switched to a very student-centric focus with that. So for exploitation procedures, the students now are actually writing their procedures and are doing the whole scenario as if they're in charge of it, and then the instructor is just checking their work, obviously, before going out there and implementing, and then they actually do implement those whoever wrote those takes the team out and implements them with an instructor there to make sure everything's safe. In the future, with the explosive ordnance disposal, a couple things we're kind of looking for, and I know there's some work already being done on it, but that Android Team Awareness Kit, or the TAC kit, is it's often referred to. A big piece of that for us is that makes sense. So we're doing the sensing, but having a way to communicate that back to an intel establishment that can use that information to actually identify the threat, the maker of that piece of equipment or whatever, so that we can actually action it and make it actionable intelligence. And so that's a huge piece that we're looking for in exploitation to continue modernizing our courses. And then robotics enhancements. I mean, with EOD, we're always looking to gain that standoff as much as possible. And so that's something we'll always continue to look at. And as I kind of started before, the robotics enhancement, it brings it full circle because I now have the guys that are going to have to maintain those robotics and other unmanned systems in the Marine Corps. So I know I kind of threw a lot at you, but I have a lot of variety of what we teach at our school. But there are a few things that we kind of see as barriers to accomplishing those things that I said we're trying to get after. And probably the biggest thing is that most of the successes that I did describe has come from individuals' initiative. My faculty members that are there, most of them only for 3 years. And so they pick something up, they do the research, maybe they learned to program VBS, which is what one of my Marines did, but that Marine's gonna PCS this summer. So how do we sustain that? So it's one of the big things that we're looking at and trying to ensure that when we have future tech that we're looking at to use as enablers, that the training for that and the support structure exists as well if we're going to actually take something like that on board. And at the end of the day, it's the faculty capacity to do all this research. Like, we can look all we want, but we only know what we know. And it takes us a lot longer, and it's the smart people in the room here that already know the answers that can help provide those to us, the best practices or whatever. And so that's kind of the biggest thing for Air Control Training Squadron, what we're looking at. And I think you'll find very similar with CTB when it comes to the faculty capacity being kind of a limiting factor for us. And with that, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Lieutenant Colonel Shankar, the CTBCO.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Thanks for making time to come out here today. My name is Lieutenant Colonel Shankar. I'm the CO of Communication Training Battalion in 29 Palms. I'll start by talking about how we're organized and what we do here, and then I'll go into some of the projects that we have. I invite you all to just take a look at some of the things I'm briefing and understand where you might be able to add value that I can't readily think of. The Colonel mentioned virtual VR and AR, and those are definitely areas we want to be focused, but I'm sure there are others as well, and I'm hoping industry can help us get there. So Communication Training Battalion trains all 06XX communicators in the Marine Corps, advanced training and entry-level training, officers and enlisted. It's the largest MOS producing schoolhouse in the Marine Corps. It's organized across 3 companies, upwards of 1,500 Marines at times, usually hovering at around 1,100 every day. We remain flexible to changing requirements in the FMF. No longer is the 3-year program cycle what we need to make changes to POIs. In fact, some of my instructors over this week have been talking to fellow Marines in the fleet, learning things about needs in the fleet. They will go back to work on Monday. They will make changes to those curriculums, and we will see those effects in the next graduating, as early as the next graduating class in those specific curriculums. Just like the theme of everything we've seen here in the conference this week, it's about maintaining warfighting readiness to be able to fight tomorrow. And I know CTB we're doing our part in that fight. But at the same time, we also remain consistent, adhering to the Commandant's Planning Guidance and Force Design 2030. And I'll go into how we do that in the next slide. So you'll see in the top left, you've heard mentioned now 21st century learning initiatives. These are the same initiatives that are going on right now in universities and public schools all over America, where memorization, multiple choice exams, brain dumping, foot stomping, that industrial age type learning is over. We no longer do it in any of the schoolhouses at McSess, particularly ours at Com Training Battalion. Ours is much more focused on the use of technology to help students learn, simulations with smartphones and such, games, students teaching each other, students being at the center of learning, and where instructors are facilitating that learning. Group learning. If you walk into any classroom in CTB, you will no longer see rows like an auditorium where students are all facing in one direction to learn. All the students are grouped in what we call pods, desks grouped together, and the idea is there's no actually any front of the room anymore. The instructor can be anywhere in the room because he or she is facilitating, and the students are learning from each other and learning with each other in ways that help them get better. And we've seen a measurable, marketable increase in knowledge retention and effectiveness in the fleet by using these techniques to learn versus ones that were used years ago. Our officer and chief courses now include heavy focus on warfighting, kill webs, operations in the information environment, and the Commandant's Planning Guidance. No longer are our officers and chiefs just learning how to use equipment and memorizing ways to do it through drills. We fully understand that our community needs to be immersed in MAGTF warfighting, joint warfighting, the future fight, and our officers and our staff NCOs have to understand that fully in order to be relevant when they go back to the fleet and know how to support their commanders to command and control. And our courses are primed for that and do a fabulous job of teaching that. Every course at CTB now has a culminating event that focuses on memory retention, practical skills, and MOS proficiency. It is a final exam to an extent, but it's more than that. Our radio operators now have to go through an escape room in order to graduate, just like an escape room you've seen in the civilian world. They have to be able to program radios and make a call to hire in order to get out of the room that we create from some of our tactical tents and caminating and such down there. Our data systems and networking Marines go through a multiple day tactical exercise where they are on a 1-to-1 equipment ratio and are required to be able to build a network from scratch, add servers to it, and work with each other of different MOSs to be able to make this network work. And if they can't do it, they don't get to graduate. There's no pressure in our schoolhouse to graduate anybody that doesn't understand how to do their jobs. But we understand that that today more than ever, our Marines need to be able to go to the fleet and add value on the first day that they get there in a way that leaders expect and want. And if they can't do that, we shouldn't send them forward. Our Marines deserve better and our commanders deserve better. Over the last 2 years, we've made several improvements in staff NCO training. Of all the things we have going on at CTB and all the great things my instructors are doing, I'd say that the number one prime focus we've had over the last 2 years is improving the training of our staff sergeants, our gunnery sergeants, and our master sergeants. And the reason for this is we understand that our staff NCOs are the center of gravity of our MOS when it comes to employing tactical networks in the field. Our staff NCOs are at the platoon level. They work with young lieutenants and young Marines at the point of friction to make these very complex networks work. And when they can't do that, the job just doesn't get done, and commanders cannot command and control in the way that they expect. Our staff NCO training is now a requirement for promotion in the Marine Corps. A staff NCO cannot advance to the next rank without going through these chiefs courses, and in some cases a litany of prerequisite courses, supervisor courses, NCO courses, and other courses that are required. And our instructors have done a fabulous job of accommodating this increased demand on our schoolhouse by running day and night classes, being creative with usage of personnel, and increasing throughput also in these prerequisite courses without any additional resources from the Marine Corps to do this. Now keep in mind, this is only a short-term solution. We can't do this forever. We need help from industry to be able to find creative ways to address this training gap, either through virtual solutions, distance learning, whatever's out there. We need to investigate and see what we can do to do this. We aren't going to get more Marines. We're not going to get larger buildings. We're not going to get more space. We're not going to be able to keep Marines in training for any longer than we have already. So the only way to do this is leverage the technology that's out there to get after this. In the past, when we've done this, though, the virtual training has not met the requirements that we need. So we need industry folks that are really willing to study our problem and understand the variety of skill sets, prerequisite skill sets of our chiefs, and create tailor-made solutions that can really help them learn the skills they need to be leaders in the Marine Corps. Not leaders in the civilian world, not leaders in industry, and not generic leaders that just understand basic fundamental COT skills, but leaders where they can get on tactical networks and make things happen for a MAGTAF. That's what we need industry to help us with, and I hope you guys can do that for us. Another project that we have going on right now is a 14-day course for gunnery sergeants to learn how to integrate the 3 major MOS fields in our OC field. That includes networking, data systems, and radio, and satellite equipment. Right now in the Marine Corps, the first time enlisted Marines are formally exposed to this integration is when they are master sergeants and they come to the Communications Chiefs course in 29 Palms. This is usually around the 20-year mark in their career. And for most of them, they'll do 3 to 5, maybe 6 more years after that before they get out of the Marine Corps. That is too late. That is too late for our enlisted leaders to understand how the whole network works together and how they can employ these networks at the tactical level. So this 14-day online distance learning course that can be taken at your own pace is designed to introduce young gunnery sergeants into how this integration works and what the vocabulary is for that, any cutting edge techniques that go along with that. So while they're in their shops as gunnies, they can begin to employ this kind of integration under the supervision of a master sergeant. And when they become master sergeants, they can better understand this. We believe this will help create networks faster in the field, make them more effective, and make them better for command and control. The last major project we have going on at CTB right now is the development of the Expeditionary Communicator course. This course intends to develop a Marine NCO or staff NCO that is skilled in operating radios, satellite communications, networks, and servers. This addresses the Expeditionary Advanced Base Operations and Marine Littoral Regiment requirements where manpower is restricted. So in those environments, we intend to deploy small teams in small areas, islands and such, to do certain operations, and those teams can be as small as 5 or 10 Marines in some cases. In previous life, we would have to send a radio operator, a SATCOM operator, a network operator, and a data systems operator, and maybe a supervisor with them, and then the same group for a night shift to go do something like this. That, as if you counted right there, that's 10 Marines. We can't afford to do that anymore. We cannot afford to send 10 Marines to an offshore island to set up a network and then get up and move again in 24 hours. So we have to have Marines that can do many skills and be able to operate cross-functionally. So this course addresses that. It's a resident course of approximately 80 days. We intend to hopefully roll this out by late summer, maybe September at the very latest. You probably guessed students need to be pre-screened before they can come to a course like this. Not every Marine in the Marine Corps has the aptitude and the drive to understand this many concepts and learn them in this shorter period of time in such a high visibility, a high stakes situation as the deployment of a Marine Littoral Regiment or Expeditionary Advanced Base Operations. So through this pre-screening and this understanding of what we need, we intend to get students into this course and start to support this demand in support of the Commandant's planning guidance. The theme we've heard in the conference all week is that we need to deliver solutions today. I think we heard that today in the acquisition thing. Yesterday we heard that many times with the general officers and admirals speaking. We need to deliver solutions today to the FMF that they can begin using and give us feedback on how they work. Admiring the problem and waiting for answers is no longer appropriate. And I believe that my instructors and my team at CTB is doing that, and doing their part in supporting this initiative. I appreciate your time. Thank you. I'll pass this back over to Colonel Broom.
All right, so I'm going to wrap this up. In just a moment, I'm going to issue this call to industry to assist us in this. So what you've heard here today is that we are fully on board and pushing with Force Design 2030 in the way that we are intended to, and that is to build a critical thinking Marine delivered straight to the fleet that is able to get on the gear and immediately provide command and control capabilities to that commander that needs them. All right. We have completely changed our programs of instruction. We are much more agile. As Lieutenant Colonel Shankar mentioned, the previous program cycle was 3 years. We can do it in weeks. And we sign the paperwork later on in order to make those changes. So, we are introducing new MOSs. We are changing MOSs in order to make sure that we can deliver the vision that the Commandant has, both in Force Design 2030 and the talent management piece, as well as the training and education piece that Commandant spoke to. So we have limits. Our limits it's purely on the backs of our instructors right now. So I need some help. These two COs need your help. And to continue to deliver those high-quality Marines to the fleet that build those little lightning bolts that commanders just expect to work. So what we have today is homegrown efforts in gamification and some very limited AR and in complete redesign of POIs that no longer require an instructor to stomp his foot, but require the class to teach itself. And we've seen memory retention go way up in those areas. So what I need from industry, and we have some sheets here for handouts. If you like them, you can scan the QR code at the end. I need your help in continuing that piece. Specifically, I need AR and VR enabled training. I need a virtual learning environment that I can stand up and tear down, build networks from scratch, router, server, switches in a cloud-based environment, and I want that as a service. Okay? And that's just what I'm thinking about. You heard what these two commanders were thinking about. If your company or your organization can provide some value, some things we're not thinking of right now, then I want to hear about it. Okay? I only have so much time and so many people to do it. I'm looking to outsource some things and bring them in. And I will leave this caveat as well. Our learning system is Moodle. So any product you guys provide to us that is not as a service must plug into Moodle. Okay? And there'll be some constraints and limitations with it as well as we go along. I'm looking to experiment. I'm looking to bring you guys in. Mr. Stokes, sitting right down here in the middle, his poor email address is in there, so he's going to get bombarded with industry calls here pretty soon. I invite you to review that document or scan it up here at the very end. Come see us in 29 Palms. Okay, make the drive, come up and see us. We'll show you what we do, and I'm interested in hearing what you have to offer for us. We'll stay and take some questions here at the end. Other than that, thank you for your attendance.
Okay, you can start lining up with your solutions. I want to thank Colonel Broom and his team today. I'll tell you what, it's a go on, stay on job. You heard that for the last 40 minutes. And they're producing Marines that do a phenomenal job for our country. So let's help them out if you can. Gentlemen, ma'am, thank you so much for being here today. We may have to expand that school. If you're doing all that, my goodness, I'm telling you right now, it's amazing what you're doing out there, and especially since you absorbed all the officer corps along with that. Thank you very much for attending. Right next door, in just a few minutes, there's going to be another session that's entitled, Have We Made Sufficient Progress in Securing Our Networks, Bringing on JADC2. Some of you probably want to go hear that. It's got our signal leaders from our communication leaders, I should say, from our Navy and Marine Corps services. So thank you for joining us today. Enjoy the rest of the week. Again, as I mentioned earlier today, and I will say it till I leave here, be safe. Let's keep COVID behind us, and have a great day today, and enjoy this afternoon. One last thing: there's a women's reception at 1600. It's going to go in the main theater, main keynote area. Come enjoy that. There's a keynote that'll be there as well, and there'll also be a happy hour leading up to and beyond that. So enjoy the floor. Thank you.